Welcome back to Telltale Books. This video I'm continuing my series on Hal Clement with his second published story, Impediment. I'm also going to include, after I talk about Impediment, I'm going to include his third published story, Avenue of Escape, because it's a short. It's what today we would call flash fiction. And I'll get into that at that time. But first of all, Impediment, which was published in the August 1942 issue of Astounding Stories, of course, and was novelette length, so not all that short. Basic synopsis: you have a spaceship crash lands on Earth. The spaceship's from some other star, and the aliens that get out of this spaceship are insectoid. They're described as being like very large moths. I forget the exact type of moth, hawk moth or something like that. Anyway, they're very large moths, and they communicate kind of by telepathy. And they have, as part of their crew, one person, for lack of a better term, who is called Talker. And that's because this person is a communication specialist. So they're landed on Earth. They have plenty of food, plenty of fuel, but the gravity is greater than what they're used to on their home world. And they are kind of refugees from their home world. So they know that to go back to their home world, they're going to need weapons. And basically they've run out of ammunition, and they need supplies to be able to create the ammunition for their guns. Specifically, they're looking for arsenic. Now, probably don't do this anymore, but in 1942, it was a year before the invention of DDT, arsenic was used as an insecticide. That's important to know, because that's why this is a weapon on an insect world, is that they were basically using insecticide to wipe out their enemies. But the real point of Impediment is communication and the difficulty of communicating. On Earth, we have the difficulty of communicating with societies and cultures that have different languages, and there are often barriers to that communication, especially any kind of cultural barriers where there might be misunderstandings. Some languages here on Earth have words that are just not translatable into other languages, and so translators choose words that come close, but they know that it doesn't come completely accurate to the meaning of the original word. Now bringing a situation where you have these aliens from another world, and Hal Clement, I think he wisely chose to base his aliens on an earthly insect, because then he had the ability to read the science on this type of insect on Earth and extrapolate how these creatures could develop any kind of intelligent communication. They wouldn't use words, they wouldn't use vocal sounds, that would have no meaning to them, because these moths communicate by other signals, and so they develop a telepathy so that they can communicate more abstract thinking. But that doesn't work when trying to read the minds of human beings. They can see images, but the abstract ideas are really difficult. So the whole story is about Talker. He meets a human being who is out researching parasite pests in the woods and fields, and this human being stumbles upon the spaceship, and the talker very carefully gets the human being to sit down and start trying to talk with him. And over time, they learn to communicate. And that's really what the whole story is about, is that science of beings that are drastically different. How are they going to communicate? How will that have to be handled? And Clement does a very good job at reasoning that out. So I consider this to be a very true science fiction story. It's not getting into really hard science, but it's getting into the science of communication and the difficulties people will possibly face if we go out among the stars and we start to run into other alien intelligences. First of all, how do we identify that they're even intelligent? And second of all, how do we learn to communicate with them if their minds are drastically different from ours? And that's why I say Hal Clement was wise in choosing his aliens to be like earthly moths, because to take the extrapolation further and come up with a biology that's significantly different from human beings, now you have this problem of making up how they might communicate in a way that is not identifiable to us scientifically today. He'd have to invent so much. And to do that for just such a short story, and only his second short story, I think that was a task that would have been beyond him. And so he was wise to pull it back and keep it to something that he could easily handle in a novelette form for what is only his very second sale. So this story can be found today in the free PDF of the August 1942 issue of Astounding Stories, which you can do by searching online. If you search through used sources, you might be able to get a hold of a good copy of The Best of Hal Clement, which was published in the late 1970s. I bought mine new, and I've kept it in really, really good shape. Impediment is in this book. And you can buy this new from Nesfa Press, The Essential Hal Clement. This is one of 3 volumes that they offer of Hal Clement's works. If you get all 3, you'll have most of what Hal Clement wrote in your library. And they are excellent books. Don't like the cover art very much, don't like the graphic design very much, but it's what's inside that really counts here. And Impediment is in this, Proof is in this, the first story of his that I reviewed, and most of his other short work can be found in The Essential Hal Clement Volume 2, Music of Many Spheres by Nesfa Press. Go to their website. They've got that, and they've got a lot of other really cool older science fiction authors that you can buy volumes of. Excellent books. I really love Nesfa Press. And so I hope you enjoyed this one. I hope you'll like and subscribe. My review of Proof is one of our biggest videos to date. It instantly shot up to 110 views. And I'm hoping that many people will continue with this entire Hal Clement series. I've got a lot more to go. This is only number 2. We're only in the early 1940s, and he lived all the way into the 2000s and wrote. So we got a long way to go. And as I said, his third story was very short, what today we would call flash fiction. Back then they called them short shorts in astounding science fiction. And this continues all the way through to today. Occasionally, Astounding and Analog publishes what they call probability zero stories. It's essentially flash fiction, very, very short, 1 or 2 pages long. And it's a different writer every time. A wide variety of writers have written these probability zeros, including writers you don't normally associate with analog, like Norman Spinrad wrote one. Well, one of the earliest, I'm not sure exactly how early in Astounding's years that they started doing these probability zeros, definitely with the coming of John Campbell, I think. So I believe Hal Clement's probability zero story is one of the earliest. And he does seem like a writer that is perfectly suited to this kind of story. So Avenue of Escape is his probability zero story. It was published in the November 1942 issue of Astounding. And once again, it's in Music of the Spheres, or you can find the PDF of the November 1942 Astounding stories, or Astounding Science Fiction by that time, online. It's out there. And what it is, this one's kind of a down-to-earth story. You have it's in World War II in the Japanese Pacific Theater. An American sergeant gets pinned down by a machine gunner. The rest of his troop gets away, but he's stuck there with this machine gunner just waiting to gun him down. But by knowing machine guns, how frequently they are able to fire and how fast those bullets are coming out, he calculates that he can walk through the bullets. And so he does so and gets away. He just walks away by using math to figure out when it's safest to be moving. Little far-fetched? That's why they call these probability zero. And if you're going to read this particular probability zero, get your math skills out, because you might want to double check his calculation to make sure he's not bullshitting you. So, like I say, it's less than 2 pages long. Very, very, very short story. What you would call flash fiction today. But kind of interesting. Definitely nothing for a top tale. But these probability zero stories are kind of interesting. So anyway, that's number 3 for Hal Clement. Covered number 2 and number 3 tonight. And so moving on, I will read number 4, called Attitude, published in 1943. It is a novella, so a little bit longer. We have a little meatier piece to dig into for the next one. And that, too, is in Music of Many Spheres. So I'm going to be relying on this book a lot for Hal Clement. And I hope you'll be back for that video and all the others we are doing. Like us and subscribe to us and come on back. Bye until then.